The Soldiers of Ares. Chapter 4. Maximus could do nothing more than watch and see what unfolded next. The man had drawn his sword again and was still standing firmly in the middle of the trail. The convoy had already seen him, but it was evident that they had no plans of stopping. But this didn't seem to bother the man. Then he did something even more unexpected. He charged at the convoy. "That proves it. He is batshit crazy," Hedger said. Maximus agreed with Hedger. Charging straight at an armored car would just leave the man as roadkill. But at the last moment, just inches before he made contact with the car's front, he shifted to the left, and with his sword ripped straight through its side. The blade actually went through the metal, and it had completely destroyed the two tires as well. The car skidded out of control and stopped right in the middle of the road, which also made it impossible for the other two vehicles to pass. Maximus wondered if that was the plan all along. The other two vehicles stopped as well, and soldiers started pouring out from all of them. Maximus counted 10 in total, 6 humans, 3 satyrs, and 1 minotaur. One of the soldiers came forward. It was a woman, and she seemed to be the one in charge. She was lean, and her blonde hair was just visible under her helmet. She would have looked pretty if she didn't have an expression that said she would break the bones of anyone who crossed her. Maximus saw that she had a captain's badge on her chest. "That was quite the neat trick, swordsman," she said. "But it's going to take more than just the 4 of you to steal this transport." "Wait, what?" Maximus thought to himself. Did she just say the 4 of you, like they were working with this man? Maximus exchanged looks with Rex and Hedger. If they didn't clear this up, they could end up in a lot of trouble. "Excuse me," Hedger started to say, "but we are not with him." Before Hedger could complete his sentence, he had 3 guns pointed at him. "Quiet," the woman barked. "I don't converse with criminals." Then she signaled her men, and the soldiers had their guns pointed at the 4 of them. She said, "I am Captain Deborah, Sharp of the armies of Ares, and unless you want that to be the name of your executioner, I suggest you come quietly." Maximus had heard of Captain Sharp before. She was pretty famous within the army. If he remembered correctly, she was an experienced melee fighter, but he didn't remember what her weapon of choice was, and he couldn't spot anything on her. But the hooded man didn't seem to be interested in talking. Instead, he just readied his sword. Among the soldiers, 5 of them had rifles and 3 had their swords drawn. Only Captain Sharp and the Minotaur seemed to be unarmed. And now all of their weapons were pointed at the hooded man. "Now's our chance. Let's try to get out of here before things get messy," Rex muttered. Maximus didn't know if they could avoid the bullets if they started running, but it seemed to be the only chance they had. And so they ran. "Shoot them, you fools," Captain Sharp yelled. That was it. Maximus thought he was going to die here. He turned back to see his end. He figured if he was going to die, he would rather face it like a man than running away from it like a coward. But what he saw instead was the hooded man coming to their rescue. When Maximus turned, he saw all 5 guns pointed at them. But they never got a chance to fire, because a single slash had ripped through 3 of the barrels, cutting the rifles in half. With this, the other 2 gunmen thought it might be a smart idea to take care of the hooded guy first, but they had no luck. With another slash, one of the gunmen began bleeding heavily. And with another, the final gunner was disarmed. "What are you waiting for? Switch to your swords," Captain Sharp yelled. With that, all the 5 soldiers drew their swords, and the other 3 swordsmen joined in as well. "Lod," Captain Sharp said to the Minotaur, "you, go after the others." Lod the Minotaur seemed happy at this proposal. He had a stupid grin on his face like a child who had just gotten a new toy. Then he started chasing after them. When Lod got closer to them, Rex tried to talk to him. "Listen, Lod, was it? We are not with him. We are just some scavengers who were nearby." Lod laughed at this. "Oh, just a bunch of scavengers, huh?" he said. "Please, you gotta believe us. I mean, we're ex-military," Maximus said. Lod just laughed even harder at this. "You think I care if you're military or scavengers or dog trainers? I just want someone to break." "What?" Rex asked, a bit confused. "Oh, you get it right," Lod continued. "You know how rare it is I get to break some bones. I mean, human bones break easy, but a fellow Minotaur is a real treat, even if there's only half of you left." Maximus could see the rage building up in Rex's eyes. He had his fist clenched around his hammer now. Then he said, "I got a problem with guys like you." Then both Rex and Lod pointed their heads up, made a growl-like sounds, and snorted. Maximus knew what this meant. This was how Minotaurs issued a challenge to others. This had turned into a clash of pride, and Maximus knew that Rex wouldn't want him to interfere in this fight. Maximus tried to figure out what to do next as the 2 Minotaurs began to clash horns and throw their fists. Behind them, the hooded man was fighting 8 armed soldiers on his own, and the thing was, he was making it look easy. Most of the soldiers were already wounded or bleeding, but the man still didn't seem to have a scratch on him. Captain Sharp was still watching all this in anger. What now, do we run? Hedger asked. Maximus didn't know what to do. He couldn't interfere with Rex's fight, and he definitely didn't want to run away. What he really wanted was to try and help the hooded man. After all, he had just saved their lives from the gunman, and Maximus didn't want to be indebted to him. But he knew that would just worsen things with the army. Besides, it didn't seem like the man needed any help, as half of the soldiers were already on the ground. I don't know, Maximus said, but we can't just leave Rex here. Rex and Laud were at each other at full force. Even without an arm and an eye, Rex was still holding his own, which Laud really wasn't expecting. But Rex still couldn't find an opening to finish the job. Must I do everything myself? Captain Sharp said. Then she pushed her cape aside to reveal a green crystal on her shoulder. Maximus knew what it was. He had seen it before with some high-ranking officers. It was a summoning crystal, a magic crystal that could be used to summon an object to its position. Maximus didn't know exactly how it worked. All he knew was it could only work with inanimate objects. He also knew that most ranked officers in the army used it for storing powerful weapons. Sure enough, the captain tapped the crystal and muttered something under her breath, and the next second a huge spear appeared in her hands. Maximus knew from just looking at it that it was no ordinary spear. The spear consisted of a long wooden body with a metal blade at its head. What made it even more fearsome were the yellow sparks that kept buzzing at the tip. The captain then took her battle stance and the spearhead began glowing yellow. Oh man, did she just pull out an energy spear? Hedger said. Energy weapons were specialized weapons using technology or magic to add an extra punch in a battle. These were usually melee-type weapons, and in the hands of a trained professional could be more destructive than a tank. Well, I guess we'll find out just how good Mr. Hood really is, Maximus said. The captain started off with a bang. A quick jab with the spear sent a blast of energy hurling towards the hooded man. He still managed to dodge it. The captain was a much better fighter than the other soldiers, but the mystery man was better. He was managing to fend off Captain Sharp and 4 other soldiers on his own. But that's when one of the other soldiers finally gained consciousness. But instead of going for his sword, he went for one of the rifles that were still not broken. He aimed straight for the hooded man's head, and at a distance he couldn't miss. But before he could take a shot, Maximus banged him on the head with his sheathed sword. Maximus didn't know why he did that. Maybe he was just repaying the man for saving them earlier. Or maybe he just respected the man too much as a swordsman to let him be taken out by a bullet from behind. Either way, he knew that there was no backing out now, so he went to the man's side to help. What are you doing? The hooded man asked. I guess I really don't like being in debt, Maximus answered. Anyway, I'm here to help. Maximus began fighting alongside the man, which was a lot harder with a sheathed sword, but most of the soldiers were already wounded and tired so he could hold his own. Only Captain Sharp was the real problem. The man turned to him and said, if you really want to help, go get what's in that transport to safety. I can hold them off here. Maximus nodded in agreement and ran to the back of the transport truck, while the man blocked anyone who tried to peruse him. As he reached the back of the truck, Hedger flew in to join him. What the hell do you think you're doing? Hedger asked. And when did you and Mr. Hood become best buds? Maximus didn't know what to say. I don't know, Hedge. I'm just going with my instinct here. Maximus stared at the lock on the transport. There was a big padlock on it, and he didn't know how to break it. Hedger was still ranting on about what Maximus had done. Would you just shut up and help me with this? Maximus said. Hedger stuck his tongue out at Maximus and looked at the lock. Then he sheepishly said, well, I might actually be able to help with that. He started searching his pouch and pulled out a long green feather with yellow inscriptions on it. It was also carved at the end. Quill key, Maximus said in surprise. From where did you get that? A quill key was a magically enhanced key that could be used to open most locks. It was quite rare as the ingredients for making it were hard to come by. They were also illegal, and one of the main ingredients was a long sprite wing feather. And judging by the shape and color of the feather used in this one, Maximus could tell it came from Hedger. Well, a warlock said he would pay good money for 5 of my longest feathers, Hedger began explaining. And he didn't have all the money he promised me with him, so he gave me one of his finished products instead. I thought you were against selling your feathers, Maximus shot back. Hedger stared at the ground and said, yeah, well, business was kind of slow and morals don't exactly fill your stomach, do they, Max? Maximus understood why he did it, but he didn't like it. Just possessing that thing was illegal, much less producing it. If Hedger had been caught with that, the army would have branded him as a thief for sure. Look, can we please discuss my business ethics later? Like when we don't have soldiers who want to kill us just a few feet away and focus on the task at hand, Hedger said. Maximus nodded in agreement and took the quill key from him. He placed the tip of the quill in the keyhole and it started to glow. A few seconds later, the padlock was unlocked. Maximus started removing the bolt and Hedger said, okay, now let's find out what all this fuss is about. Maximus didn't know what to expect inside. maybe gold or magic jewels, or some powerful weapon. But when Maximus finally opened the door, all he saw inside was a very thin and frail-looking old man in chains curled up in the corner. The man looked like he was at least 100 years old. His hair was long and gray, and he had an overgrown beard that was at least a week old. His clothes were torn and dirty. He also had a chain attached to the wall around his leg. Not that he seemed to be in any condition to run away, he just sat there in a corner muttering to himself, and as far as Maximus could tell, he hadn't even noticed that the doors had opened. So all this is for a dirty old man," Hedger said. Maximus was really confused now. "Don't know, but he must be someone important. Let's just ask him." Maximus went up to the old man and asked, "Sir, who are you?" No response. Sir," he said again. Still nothing. Then Maximus slowly put his hand on the old man's shoulder. The old man looked up so fast that it startled Maximus a bit. Then he said, "Glaciers slowly melt as they travel from poles." Maximus didn't understand what he was talking about. "Excuse me," he said. "Jumping squirrels make nests in hollow trees," was the old man's reply to that. "Is this guy off his rockers?" Hedger asked. "Light goes back to white when traveling through two prisms," was the old man's next quote. "Yeah, he's definitely nuts," Hedger said. "So all that fighting wasn't just for any old man, but for one that's crazier than a drunken unicorn. Whatever the case, we can't just leave him here," Maximus said. He had no idea what was going on, but he was pretty sure the army wasn't taking the old man to show him his retirement benefits. Maximus looked at the chain while the old man started talking about snowflakes, but he didn't find a lock or anything on it, so the quill key would be useless. He knew he would have to break the chain. "Quick, get me a rock or something to smash the chain with," he told Hedger. "That won't be necessary," said a voice from behind. Maximus turned back to see that one of the soldiers had finally caught up with them. He was standing at the entrance to the truck and he had a rifle pointed at them. Maximus realized that it was the same soldier he had taken out earlier. He stood there with the gun pointed towards them. Maximus and Hedger froze. The old man still just sat there in his corner mumbling about potassium or something. "It looks like the end of the line for you two," the soldier said with a grin on his face. That's when a giant scorpion's tail shot out of the ground and ripped right through the soldier's chest. This has been a chapter from Book 1 of the New World Odyssey series, The Soldiers of Ares. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.